Right. It says it's waiting for the meeting. Sorry, he says it's waiting for the meeting to start. I've told him to log out and then log back in again. So hopefully that will solve the problem.
Are we ready, Julie?
It's just starting up now. Yep.
Right. Right. Good evening. This is a meeting of the Neighbourhood and Public Spaces Committee. It's a meeting of the council which is being held remotely. The meeting is being recorded and streamed via YouTube, where members of the public are able to watch the meeting. The recording will be made available on the council's website following the meeting. Please note that any comments posted on the chat feed of the council's YouTube channel during the recording of this meeting will not be monitored by the council. Right. Apologies for absence.
I've received no apologies, Councillor.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, anybody? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would be items 7 and 10. With 7 and 10, I'm a member of Essex County Council, and item 7 mentions the Basildon Local Highways Panel.
Thank you. Smith, Councillor Buck.
As you know, I'm also a member of Essex County Council, so in that regard, item 7 particularly, I'm not involved with SEPP directly, but for item 7, general interest.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. The minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of March. Can I have your approval of those minutes, please? I think all members were present then. If you can indicate. Councillor Ansell?
Yes, Chairman, or for, yeah.
Councillor Blake?
Yeah.
Councillor Adeniran? Unmute.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley?
Yeah.
Councillor Morris?
Yeah.
And myself in favour. That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Item 4 is the COVID impact assessment. Let me start off before I introduce Mr. Brace to follow up. The anticipated financial impact as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic is currently projected to be in the region of £4.2 million across the council. The position, however, is fluid as the COVID situation develops and is being continuously monitored. To date, the council has received or is anticipating around £2.2 million in government support. The wider financial position is currently being reviewed as part of the development of the budget strategy. This includes potential interim measures that may be appropriate over the short term. Specifically, with regard to this committee, the most significant impact is the suspension of a number of revenue-generating services, including theatre, community and leisure facilities, in line with government guidance. We're also experiencing material contraction in other income streams as the community adapts to new working practices and isolation, such as parking, licensing, trade waste, building control. This income loss is anticipated to be in the region of £1.5 million, but may be mitigated to some extent by reduced expenditure. Additional costs are also being incurred in managing COVID-19 activities to support communities and businesses. In respect of this committee, they're expected to be in the region of £100,000, relating to additional equipment for churchyards, signage, etc., to support social distancing. Now, I'd ask Mr. Brace now to run through various items under the control of this committee. Mr. Brace.
Thank you, Chairman. I will give you a whiz through all the services within this committee to give you an idea of what's been happening and where we are now. Obviously, it's ever changing. So I'll start with environmental services. Building control inspections have been being undertaken, but we have done that largely through photographs, etc. So a new way of working. We have still been visiting large development sites because construction has not ceased everywhere in the borough during that period, but that has been done with appropriate safety in mind. All building control officers have been working remotely. Obviously, our level of income has been impacted where builders have not been doing small extensions, for example, and also our disabled facility. People are not allowing workmen into their house, and equally workmen are not wanting to go into houses. So that's been quite heavily impacted, and we're hoping we can get that service on stream soon, as that is affecting the most vulnerable in our community. Our refuse and recycling services, as I'm sure you're all aware, have been delivered in total throughout the lockdown. I will tell you they have been busier than normal. Recycling is up by 11%, garden and food waste is up by 29%, and glass is up by 39%. I haven't got the figure for residual waste, but our black sack waste is also up. I can see some councillors are questioning why glass should be up so high. The special collection service had ceased for a period, and that was restarted a couple of weeks ago, and I'm pleased to report it is very busy, and we're looking to put a second team on that. So we're doing around about 30 collections per day, and the crunch service at this moment remains suspended. Our cleansing teams, another set of unsung heroes in our borough, have been picking up litter, and all I can say is dogs in the borough must be very fit, as we have been also emptying far greater amounts of waste in dog bins over the last 3 months. The team are working exceptionally hard, and as some will know, parks have been particularly under strain with litter, and we have been adapting and changing the service to meet with how our residents have been using the borough in a very different way to what they normally do. Obviously, environmental enforcement has been heavily impacted by this. We have minimised our team, and NES, who were doing some additional enforcement, were put into furlough, and we have been using a skeleton team to look after any dangerous fly tipping and abandoned vehicles. We are now stepping that back up because, as some councillors here have contacted me on a regular basis around fly tipping, we are upping the teams back, and NES are now back on the streets. Grounds maintenance, you will know we stopped grass cutting. I'm pleased to say we have restarted it, and we have now completed the first cut of the borough by the end of this week, and the borough will start looking a bit tidier on the second cut. Our winter prune was concluded. We have now started our summer prune, but we are doing the summer prune in a slightly different way this year. It will be delivered in-house by our pride teams. So we have already done sheltered accommodation, and we are now doing flat blocks. And ID Verdi will join in that summer prune once the second cut has finished. We are looking to do something different this year, and we'll be monitoring it regularly to ensure that the borough is looking nice and pleasant, but we are obviously time constrained. Our engineers have been doing inspections throughout, and that's been done completely safely, and now the team are currently working with us on getting our high streets ready for full reopening from Monday. Cemeteries was an interesting one for us. We prepared, as you should, for the worst case scenario. So we did have additional equipment delivered to 2 of the cemeteries, and ID Verdi, where they'd stopped grass cutting, seconded 6 of their staff to assist us in cemeteries. What I can say is we did not see an increase in burials over the last 3 months, and in fact we have seen a reduction. So we have now sent the extra equipment back, but cemetery income is lower than we would have anticipated to what we projected normally without COVID-19. All our services at the depot could not run if our transport workshop was not working. So another one of our contractors, Riverside, have done an excellent job of adapting their business to ensure it's safe, to make sure that we can still get our refuse loaders out and collecting waste across the borough. Our recycling centre obviously closed at the same time that Essex chose to close theirs. We have now reopened at the same time. The first day we did see 150 vehicles, which is exceptional, but we have now seen a significant drop off to normal levels at the recycling centre. And obviously we have been continuing with inspections with trees throughout the period, although some only emergency works have been carried out. I'll turn to environmental health that have seen an enormous change in the workload and the responsibilities since lockdown. All officers have been working from home. Some have had to do site visits. The team now has responsibility for advice and enforcement in relation to coronavirus business restrictions, for business closures and social distancing measures in liaison with the police and with trading standards from county. I can say that our team have been out and they have seen 400 businesses in this period to give them advice, and responding to over 200 inquiries in relation to business closures and social distancing. So the team have had quite a large workload to be dealing with in the last few months. We have our first primary authority partnership, which is with Fish and Chicken and Churchill's. And that means that Basildon is the first point of contact nationally for environmental health matters. So that is a paid for service. So well done to our team to win that contract. We're working with the police, landlords and businesses on our town centre recovery, which has been the focus of our work for the last 2 weeks. It has been very intense. It is very challenging dealing with local businesses, national businesses, other landowners. So my thanks go to the team that have done an outstanding job to do quite a lot in a very short space of time. We are awaiting further announcements of the lifting of restrictions on hairdressers, and we will obviously respond as and when we can. We are supporting Test and Trace and the system for that. We are getting information every day. I can't give you clarification on what our part will be, but it's more likely to be in line with supporting businesses where there may be an outbreak. We have maintained our other services of pollution control, statutory nuisance and private sector housing where we can. We have done a proactive inspection programme for food and hygiene that's been suspended as we know, and contact is being maintained with high-risk businesses in the meantime, and work continues on a daily basis on air quality because the government deadlines have not changed. This is a big directorate, so my last bit goes to culture and health. As mentioned, Towngate Theatre closed in line with government regulation. The team have done an outstanding job of moving all hirers and all shows to a later date. We have a very loyal customer base, which has meant that some have transferred their ticket money to that new show. Income is majorly affected, but staff are doing a great job, and those will have seen it. We have done quite a lot through the website, and the team at the Towngate is now also supporting our pink sack delivery. We'll also be supporting the high street recovery, and have been redeployed into other work across the council, including the community hub, to support work that is going on. In terms of leisure, obviously leisure centres have been closed. The vast majority of SLM's team have been furloughed apart from essential facility staff to ensure the building remains safe. The sporting village has been used as a testing site for COVID-19. We will be starting work very shortly on the replacement of the athletics track there. But as you know, we have also been able to open tennis courts, ball courts, bowling greens and fishing lakes. So that's been over the last couple of weeks. some yet to open. But obviously income is significantly down on those, and we are waiting for the latest tranche of guidance on when leisure facilities and amenities can open. Parks and countryside, I would quite clearly say this is the busiest time they have ever had, certainly in my years of being here. But there has unfortunately been a very high level of antisocial behaviour, and it's mainly to do with the easing of lockdown, which is the use of areas such as play areas, littering, dumping, barbecuing, etc., which has caused some issue. But we have had an excellent relationship with the police, and they have supported us throughout. But the vast majority of people have been using our parks in a very responsible way, and I think it's not unnoticed that we have seen an enormous amount of joggers and cyclists over the last 3 months, far more than we normally would. Obviously, our community facilities have also been closed. We have worked with not only the ones that we directly manage in our hirers, but also the others that are leased to community groups, and have supported them throughout to try and help them as much as we can. And they have also some been able to access the business support grant. We are now working to open up buildings for early years only. And again, we will be opening up our directly managed and also supporting the other community groups that have early years preschools in them. Blood donation is restarting at the place. So again, that will be one particular activity that is going back in there. But again, income is significantly down in those areas. So I'd just like to say from me, it has been a very difficult 3 months for these services, but I can tell you they have done an outstanding job in keeping the customers, our reputation on our income generating services, as well as doing an excellent job collecting waste in its growing amounts across the borough. Quite happy to take any questions, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. Can I just comment first of all, my thanks, and I think we should record the thanks of members of this committee for the hard work done across the board by officers and staff on every item you've listed tonight. I think the work they've undertaken and the level has been absolutely brilliant. And can I also add my personal thanks to Mr. Brace, because he's kept me as chairman updated all the time with this, not for interfering, but just letting me know what was going on. And I think it's been a good working relationship. And I thank him and all the officers for that, because I think it's shown that across this council, we can work together, and the staff have been absolutely brilliant. So well done to all them. So when we come to just note this report, I'd like it added, hopefully by this committee, our thanks to all the staff involved in these activities. Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Chairman. I would join with you in your support for the staff, and also for the comprehensive report that Mr. Brace has just given to the committee. I think that was most helpful. I have got a small number of points which I'd like to raise, and I don't know whether the first one really should be to you or to Mr. Brace, where you mentioned the financial impact on the council. And you mentioned a 4.2 million impact, 2.2 million of government support, and a loss of income of 1.5 million. I wasn't sure whether the 4.2 million was net of those, or whether it's a gross figure. I don't know if you're in a position to give clarity to that, but if not, I'll ask the question somewhere else. The other points which I just wanted to ask Mr. Brace about, post-COVID, we're also going to be working in an awful lot of different manners when it comes to providing services across the board, but particularly within the field of this committee. And I wonder if any work has been done on the financial impact over the longer term. I don't mean the short, what's going on today, but what might be going on in a year's time, because it's not long when we will start talking about next year's budget. On the question of building control, I understand that a lot of building sites have been closed for duration, and many are now reopening. And Mr. Brace mentioned about our officers visiting large sites. In my experience, when I used to visit sites regularly, it tended to be that major developers, major builders, whichever term you prefer to use, tend to act responsibly and to work to the right rules. The issue is with the smaller builders, and I think the impression I got from Mr. Brace was, if you like, they're getting on with it themselves. So just like an assurance about how we're addressing the smaller builders. The mentions about increased recycled waste and so on, I think we can all understand that, you know, anecdotally you walk up the street on glass day and see how many boxes are full rather than half full. A particular mention was made though of dog waste. And as most of you know, I have a couple of dogs, and I do walk them at the moment, mainly around Riverside Walk in Wickford. And the dog bins there, one at each end, generally speaking, are fairly well used. But anecdotally, I have noticed an awful lot more waste that is not being picked up. And I just really wanted to say to Mr. Brace, have we any plans for trying to address that through enforcement one way or another? And the last point on cemeteries, I suppose it's good news in a sense there's been less burials, but have we any information as to whether that's been offset by the amount of cremations in the area? Because, you know, we see contrasting comments about the number of additional deaths. I happened to speak to one of the receptionists at my doctor's today, and she said she hadn't come across a patient directly that had been affected by the virus. I'd like to think that's much wider spread, but as I know, a couple of people that passed away as a result of it, I just really wonder what the level of impact is within the borough as opposed to just across the nation. So I'll be quiet now, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. On the finances, as I understand it, and someone will correct me if I'm wrong, the 4.2 million is over the council, and the 2.1 or whatever it is comes off of that, but we're still short of income generation, and we've had no support from the government for loss of income. Now, before I ask Mr. Brace to answer the other points, can I, so he can clear it all up in one go, if I bring Councillor Blake in, because he indicated exactly the same time as Councillor Buckley to speak. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I reiterate the comments you made earlier about the officers and whatnot, and how great they are. They really are, you know, an asset to the council. So totally agree with what you said on that one. There was just only one point that I'm a little bit concerned of, and that was, and I may have heard it wrong, where the Pride teams, obviously, you know how much we were supporting them and whatnot. Now, the point I want to make is, I noticed you said that they're doing something else other than, or is it as well as? You said they've been taken away and they started doing the cutting or something, the pruning. Now that may be a cost-cutting episode. Excuse the pun there. But if that's the case, are they taking their eye off their day job, which I hope they're not. But I will say this, and you know, judging by around last year compared to this year, and it's no difference in administration, so I mean, I'm just saying it as it is, the sidewalks certainly don't look up to the standard that they were last year, certainly around where I live. I'm just wondering if they have taken their eye off the ball, or if you can just go a little bit more into what that's about, if you could, please, Paul.
Mr. Brace.
Right, I'll talk about post-COVID. In answer to your question, Councillor, yes, we are looking at what it may look like. I'm working with Sport England currently on what the return to sport might look like in... Sorry, can you not hear me? I can't hear you. You're muted, Councillor Harrison.
Sorry,
I can hear
I
you.
think Councillor Morris was indicating I think he's waving. You wish to speak? So I'll let Councillor Morris in first. I apologise.
Okay, yep.
Right, okay. Yeah, can I just add my compliments to our refuse collection service? I think they've done a really outstanding job over this period of time, but it's consistent because they're always doing a good job. I did catch earlier on, Paul, you said that all the sheltered housing complexes, the hedges and cutting had been done.
Mr.
Paul's
Bryce.
frozen.
Mr. Bryce.
He's frozen.
Frozen in time.
Can I bring Mr. Bryce in?
Yeah, go
Mr. Bryce.
He's frozen, Chairman. He's gone, Chairman.
We've lost Mr. Bryce. Okay, we'll come back to. I think we'll have to come back. Julie, let us know if he's trying to get back in, please.
Yeah, I think he'd probably left the meeting to try, perhaps something went wrong, to try and sort it out. I'll let him back in.
I don't really want to go on without him even to the next item. I say, I'm glad that all members are happy because I think the staff have been exceptional across the board. I mean, you talked about the refuse collectors. I believe what they've done, because I was concerned, first of all, in the first couple of weeks of lockdown that we might start falling apart, and we didn't. And I think they've been fantastic. And the street cleansing people, and Rachel Glover with her team, I think have been fantastic on the environmental health side as well. Any news on the base?
Sorry, Chairman, you are breaking up a bit as well, I'm afraid.
Sorry, no, there's not back in yet.
Yeah, this happened last night, didn't it, Malcolm? When I got kicked out last night, I disappeared. Couldn't. Okay, I'll tell you what we do. Can you hear me now?
You're breaking up.
Yeah, it's all. Just looking to see if I've got Paul's number.
I've got Paul's number.
I've got Paul, yeah, so have I. So he's pretty well answer his phone now.
No.
Do you want me to do it, Julie? It's Rachel.
Yeah, if you could just text him.
Yeah, okay, and I'm breaking up as well, so.
He's on voicemail.
Okay. Okay, cheers. Okay, yeah. He's trying to get back in, but the internet isn't very good in Wickford, apparently. Right. While he's coming, trying to get in, can you hear me now? If we move on to the update on members' investments and projects, that was all circulated with the agenda. Quite a list here because I wanted to have it so all members of the committee could see an update of where we were with every item.
You're cracking up, Chairman.
I'll try to talk quieter. Will that help? I wanted all members to actually see where we were with all these items which the committee have been working on for the last year, and even some were started when Councillor Baker was chairman. I think it's important they all come forward and we know where we are with these. Julie,
Yep.
we've got a problem. Only members can't
We
all
all
hear
need to
me.
compare our internet suppliers and see which is, I don't know if I break up at your end, but
You do.
yeah, I'm on BT if you want.
Yeah, Malcolm's going as well now.
What did you say, Kev?
Well, Paul's coming back.
I said Malcolm's cracking up as well now. Well, obviously I am.
Right, Paul's rejoining the meeting. The options are really whether enough members are still connected well enough for it to form a quorum, and whether the meeting is being conducted in such a way that everyone's hearing, or that enough people are hearing what's happening. So Paul's
Well,
back. Yeah.
Mr. Brace is here now. If you can hear me, Paul,
Yes, Ken. Yep.
because members are having difficulty hearing me. So if you can now pick up where we left off, and hopefully
Yeah.
that item we can then conclude by answering the points that other members have raised, yeah?
Yeah, apologies for that. My internet just stopped working for some reason, so apologies for that. Post-COVID question. We are working with as many bodies as we can, Sport England being one, to understand what their views are, thoughts are around how people will come back to sport, how that will look in terms of what the potential guidance might look like, on what capacities swimming pools and other things will be, as well as talking to Arts Council and others around theatres and social distancing and how that will work. So there is now starting to come through some kind of guesstimate of what that might look like and what impact that may have. I would imagine in the next month or so, month and a half or so, we'll have a much clearer picture around what all businesses will start looking like in terms of our income generation. And I suppose the impacts we will have if people are going to continue to work from home, what is that going to do for car parks, for example, season ticket income? So there's quite a lot of work we are currently undertaking of what the impact on every income stream will be. And we will report that to members in due course prior to, I guess, around the budget setting time, because we'll need to understand how long that impact may be for and what decisions we'll have to make come budget setting. So I haven't got all the answers now because we've got a tremendous amount to work through. And it's not just this committee. Obviously, we've got shops that we rent, etc. So all that is having to be taken into account as part of that. In terms of dog waste, that is something that the enforcement team will be picking up. Not picking up, but will be enforcing where they can. It is notoriously difficult to catch someone doing it, particularly an enforcement officer. And I spoke to a number of members that have seen someone in the distance do it, but it's almost impossible to catch them to be able to tell them. So it is quite a difficult task, but we have done a number of campaigns in the past which have seen an improvement. We have done a number of press releases. I know Councillor Harrison has done a couple over this period to remind people to use them. So it is, I have to say, sadly, a never-ending task as a dog owner. I do not understand why people cannot either put it in a bin or take it home, but there we are. That's what we're faced with. But we will continue to do campaigns. In terms of crematorium, my last contact with the crematorium was about 3 weeks ago, and again, there was no significant increase in the amount of cremations. So that's not to say because Basildon Hospital had a number of deaths, it doesn't necessarily mean because of the area it was dealing with, it was from Basildon. And also there were some that were put into a mortuary for a long period where families have requested that they were held. So there's lots of factors where it's not necessarily coming out in the instant, sadly, that people have succumbed to COVID, that they would then straight away be going to a crematorium or a burial. We have seen a couple of COVID burials to our knowledge, but again, even some of the undertakers are not aware necessarily if they're COVID or not, and that's the same at the crematorium. So it hasn't had the impact on those things that we expected it to. The figures for Basildon at some point will be publicised. We get sort of daily figures. They're not high, but we haven't seen the whole figures, all the figures together. In terms of the summer prune, councillor, so what we are doing is diverting the Pride team to do a summer prune. If there are areas of particular concern that are an emergency or dangerous, of course they will be done by the Pride team. We are looking at doing pruning differently going forward because we're not necessarily happy with the service that we've had previously, and lots of residents are concerned, and we're not seeing a reduction in complaints during the summer. We weren't intending doing it this way. For operational reasons, we have had to do it because we weren't even sure we would have no lockdown by the 1st of June that would enable us to be able to do a prune. So this is a 1 year, bear with us. We will put what resources we can, and we will do the best we can in the borough over the next few months. But this is only for a three-month period, and then Pride teams will be back doing what are the priorities of the borough. But at the moment, it's catching up on a lot of work that has not been done over the last 3 months is our focus, really. And I didn't hear if there was a question from Councillor Morris, but because I disappeared then, so apologies if there was, because I've not got that one.
Yeah. No, the question was, Paul, is that I thought you'd said that all the sheltered housing complexes had been done.
Pruning, yep, as far as I know, I've been informed they've been done and grass cutting has been done.
In fact, I came past Spencer's Court in Wickford yesterday, and you was forced on the outer edge of the pavement because the edge is overgrown at the front.
All right, well, Hugh's listening in. He can check that up tomorrow, and James, so they'll look into that tomorrow. But as far as we know, that had been done. But it will be done. Panic not.
Other than that, I just think the staff, our collection staff, need to be congratulated for the work that they do.
Thank you.
Please interrupt one at a time, talking if it overlaps. Councillor Blake. No?
Already had my say, thank you.
Okay. If everyone's happy with that, it's for noting with the addition to our thanks to all the staff right across the board who serve this committee. Everyone happy with that? Any dissenters, really? All in favour? All in favour? Thank you, that's unanimous. If we now move on, I hope you can hear me now at the moment. No?
It's not great.
You're breaking up a little bit. You sound a bit like an old 1960s radio. That might be a compliment.
Makes two of us, Councillor Buckley. Right, next item, item 5, update on members' investments. As I was explaining while Mr. Brace was absent, it's a list of all the items covering this committee. I think we've initiated many projects over the last year and larger projects over the previous years. I'll ask Mr. Brace to go through it. I didn't intend commenting on some of these, but if you can't hear, it's going to be difficult.
Chairman, it's all going gobbledygook again, I'm afraid. From my side of it, anyhow.
The same with everybody.
Yeah, you have moments of clarity and moments being garbled.
Yeah.
And now you're clear again.
Yeah, same.
Mr. Brace, you're going to go through it yourself then? as we discussed. Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. So as if I'm prepared. So Councillor Harrison asked me to bring this report to you regarding where we were on a number of projects that this committee had set out in various guises over the last period. As you can see, we have paused, we have carried on doing some work, and there is some new work that has arrived. So I suppose the two key ones at the top there are Pitsea Pool and Billericay Pool. Now, obviously, those have been paused for two reasons. First reason, neither of the tenants or contractors that are in those buildings are currently working. I am in contact, obviously, on a regular basis with both to make sure they're all right, which they are, but they are not currently working and cannot enter into debate around contracting, improving facilities, etc. Secondly, I suppose it's that point that Councillor Buckley brought is the future. What does leisure look like? What is the financial impact of the income that may come in and habits changing? And at the moment, guidance around leisure, so doesn't give us any indication of what we could be modelling. So that's why we've paused them at this moment, but are keeping a very sharp eye on. We continue to do some work on community assets, and that's obviously, we've added a piece of work to that now of looking at what the impact of COVID may have on those, but that is still ongoing, as are the review of basic playing pitch and built facilities strategies as part of our local plan. Office work need us to go out and visit. Youth zone work, you'll remember that we were bringing back third site and some work around transport, which Councillor Harrison had asked for. We are still working on that. That has taken longer than we'd anticipated with our contractors, but is still ongoing. We are still working on waste. A very important part of a committee report will be coming in September. We were hoping for this committee, but it will be September because it doesn't seem as if the government will be backing off from its new environmental bill. So we have a time-defined period to review our waste services. As I said, enforcement is paused, but that I can now say is back. So that is updated since the report was written. And as Rachel knows, and we still know, we still have a ministerial direction around our air quality. We continue to work with the government. I will reiterate, the threat of a charging zone has not gone away. It is for us to demonstrate that we can, by either engineering solutions or by softer measures, can bring compliance earlier than 2023. I would, please don't ask me a question about this, but technically, just because there's less cars on the road doesn't mean that the threat of this goes away because of the drop in O2 on that on those junctions. It does in fact make it worse because the compliance date would therefore be further away. So it is in no way, we cannot back off. This has to be delivered, and we still have a deadline, which from memory I think is July. We will need to conclude it by. Most members here will remember the landfill site at Pitsea, which was recently stopped being used. It's now just topping off on the site. We are in negotiation and have been for some time with Veolia, with County and with RSPB about opening that area up to open space. We are now in a position to start having a conversation as the Section 106 conditions are being progressed by Essex County with Veolia and are shortly to be agreed. And in that instance, we can then pursue taking responsibility for that land, hopefully in partnership with RSPB. So we're doing that, currently conversations over the telephone, but we will bring a report to committee shortly. There are other bits there which are not as huge as we would have thought. I just want to bring your attention to the Lake Meadows drinking fountain that we funded or assisted with funding to the Friends of Lake Meadows. They had purchased what they believed was a compliant water fountain. It apparently doesn't meet British standards when they said it did. They're looking to see if that can be adapted to make it British standard. If not, it will have to go back. So we will keep you posted on that, because we were going to replicate that, if you remember, at the last committee at Wickford, at the Memorial Park and at Tyler Country Park, but we've put that on clearly on hold until we know what the outcome of that water fountain is. I'll just draw your attention, I'm sure all of you have read all of these, is the Beauchamps field. So just before lockdown, Beauchamps School decided not to renew the lease on the field, Beauchamps Field, which is at the side of Wickford Memorial Park and does really form part of the Riverside Walk, actually, Councillor Buckley, as you well know. So that piece of land has now come back to the council in discussion with Councillor Harrison. It's 21.5 acres of land. It's in the green belt. So it's bringing a report of what the options are to you of what we can use that land for going forward, and keeping it as open space, but it's what we do with it. So it's just really notifying you of that piece of work, and if you're happy for us to crack on, we will crack on and start getting that work done. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. I bring Councillor Rimmer in first because he asked to come to the meeting tonight purely to talk on Pitsea swimming pool. Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very concerned about this report. I don't think members of the committee should just note it. I think it needs to be amended and possibly this aspect of it relooked at. Pitsea swimming pool is obviously something dear to my heart. It's something that I've been campaigning on. It's something that my group and in administration actually implemented as policy and actually brought to a budget meeting on the 14th of February 2019, and 42 members of the council voted on that item. At Policy and Resources Committee last week, we were told that there couldn't be a pause or a moratorium on certain items that were brought to the last budget meeting that took place. This year, but in fact, we're happy to pause the Pitsea pool. Now, I understand the reasons that the officer Paul Brace gave, but they are very different to the ones in the report. In the report, it actually states that it has been paused whilst we seek to understand the implications of COVID-19 on council finances and those of our delivery partners. And that is very different. And we're not using that to do the same to other projects. And I am a cynic, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I do feel like there has been an element of swimming through custard in respect of getting this pool off the ground and going with this. We as an administration were promised that this would go through in terms of to consultation stage short in the spring of 2019, but then that was delayed, and there was talk by the chairman of the council, the leader of the council, but there was no plan, that 2.5 million wouldn't be able to build a pool, wouldn't even be able to afford to fill the pool. And then the plan was found, and then the money was found, and now we're in a position that when at first we had this sort of vote to get it going again, and now it's been paused again. It's become the first project on the sort of chopping line. And my concern is we should actually be thinking about how do we have that continuum in terms of the health and well-being of our residents. They're jogging more, we've just heard. They're cycling more. They're using our parks more. They're walking their dogs more. And these people have this pent-up demand to swim and to use pools. I've heard it from young families who'd like to train their kids how to swim, elderly people who like the social experience of going to a swimming pool, and the sort of physiotherapeutic experience of that as well. My email box was full of that, and I campaigned on that. And I am shocked, absolutely shocked, that some of the items that are going through ongoing and not being paused, which could have easily been paused. Apologies, Chairman. Wickford Christmas lights. I think that could have waited a little bit. You know, Christmas is some time off. We need to get going with these, with the pool. And I speak for all of my residents that I will keep battling for this pool, and I hope members of the committee will see sense and reject this part of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Rimmer. It's a pity you wanted to make this a political thing. There is no way Pitsy Pool, the proposal, is going to be stopped while I'm chairman of this committee, and that isn't what's going to happen. And this is capital expenditure.
Can't hear you, Chairman.
Can anybody hear me? Julie.
Hear you, but broken up a bit.
Okay. Pitsy Pool is not going to be stopped. Read my lips. Mr. Brace.
I think to confirm to you, Councillor, the difficulty that we have with progressing these two projects, because there's Billericay and Pitsy, the difficulty with doing it is we haven't got the contracts in place, and we haven't got now a clear path of how we're going to deliver that project with the building closed, and we're unsure of how those buildings are going to open at this point in time. We are awaiting government guidance, and I am speaking to Sport England on Friday to find out a bit more around the timeline and the guidance to opening, and when we can get those businesses back working. And I would say that the leisure industry has been, as the licence trade has been, significantly impacted by this, and it's not a case of stopping it. Yes, of course, health and well-being will be an absolute priority coming out of COVID-19, but at this stage we need to plot what that's going to look like, particularly if social distancing is in gyms, for example. You're looking at potentially 60-65% less people being allowed in the gym. So that is a real financial and management dilemma for not only the contractor, which is what it says in my report, as well as for us. So that is, sorry if that's not come along, that is what I meant in that report, is there's two things to consider. There's how much more it could potentially cost us, and secondly, how much more it could cost the contractor. So all those things, we've paused the work that we were doing, but we are doing work that is related to Pitsy Pool and Billericay Pool, but it's not overt to actually getting it delivered. It's working out what it now looks like. So I apologise if it come across that we've stopped it and we walked away. We haven't. It's just that we can't directly do what we were intending to do, which, as you know, was to agree to go out to tender for the works.
Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't 100%, unfortunately, Craig, I don't 100% agree with my colleague Craig there. I do understand why you put it on pause. I actually do. I think slightly the wording, the last part regarding what Councillor Rimmer did actually say was about council resources. I think that was badly worded to say that you need to negotiate with the operators and they're not working because of the furlough or whatnot. I understand, but the bit about the council finances, that would have
very low to try and use a global pandemic and a nationwide lockdown that has cost the lives of tens of thousands of people in this country to try and score a cheap political point. Everyone wants this to happen. It's just a shame it's just resorted tonight to cheap political point scoring from one member. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ansell. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on the Beauchamps site, there's an opportunity there for some tree planting areas to come in, because I think I do like to see trees in appropriate places, not always in back gardens where they're inappropriate, but I think trees in that situation would be ideal. Thank you.
Morris. Callahan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to Julie for letting me in. I was in the waiting area for some time, but it's good to join you. And I did want to speak on this item, Mr. Chairman, in relation to the swimming pool, and concur wholeheartedly with what Councillor Ansell has just said there. And if I, by way of context, can just update the committee on a conversation that the Chief Executive and I had with the Minister of State for Sport on Monday, where the discussion was had about the reopening of gyms and leisure facilities and swimming pools, where the government's own estimate for the amount of subsidy that will be needed in order to get these leisure centres back up on their feet over the next 18 months is £1 billion. That is how much the government themselves are estimating that the industry will lose in income over the next 18 months as social distancing is enforced. Now, I think it is perfectly fair and legitimate, as I said last week at Policy and Resources, for councillors to ask what we are going to look to pause and to review. And I take the point around the youth zone, but what I would say is that we're not at procurement of the youth zone yet, whereas we are some way down the road when it comes to this swimming pool. Of course, we know that the claim that Pitsea Swimming Pool was to be funded out of the 2017-18 budget year, the budget that was passed in February 2018, is a fallacy, because that £9 million that was in that budget was for Billericay Swimming Pool. And as far as I'm concerned, the following year, the Conservative group that led the council did not change their approach to Billericay Swimming Pool. They were continuing with that. But of course, we were going to get swimming pools in Pitsea and Langdon. Now, where the additional money was going to come from, none of us are any the wiser. And it took until last year for this committee, led by you, Mr. Chairman, and Councillor Ansell, it took for you to properly outline how Pitsea Swimming Pool was going to be financed. And so I know that Councillor Rimmer is somewhat of a Johnny-come-lately when it comes to this campaign. Some of us have been campaigning for Pitsea to have a swimming pool since the one that was already there in 2012 was closed. But let me just say very clearly, on the 14th of May, Mr. Chairman, Councillor Rimmer was emailed updating him what the position was in respect of a review, because we were waiting to see, as we've heard tonight from officers, what the market trends are going to be. Now, if Councillor Rimmer knows more about what the market trend is going to look like today than the professional officers of this council, than any councillor on this committee, or indeed the Minister of State for Sport in his own Conservative government, I am all ears, Mr. Chairman, as to what that is going to look like. But I think, as we've already alluded to, we will commit to the Pitsea Swimming Pool. We actually committed to how it would be financed. We actually committed to a concrete consultation, and we will deliver it. But we will do so prudently, protecting the taxpayer, especially given the fact, as Councillor Ansell has quite rightly said, we are in the midst of a global pandemic. So now is not the time for cheap political point scoring. Now is the time to come together and look sensibly at all of the schemes and projects that are on the table, and that is exactly what the public would expect us to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Callahan. Okay. The report for noting. I intend now to move on to the next item. Are you all agreed to note the progress of projects? I've asked Councillor, you in favour? All those in favour, please show. Only noting. We're only noting. Now I'm moving on to the next item.
Chairman, I didn't get an answer to my question. I mean, I know it's for noting, but we've asked about an answer to my question about the consistency from officers regarding that.
Mr. Brace has answered the question on Pitsea Swimming Pool.
He never answered the question about I mean, I'm not being political. Councillor Ansell's actually said I wasn't being political, and I'm not being political. I'm just talking about why the difference in consistency. I'm not making a political point.
Okay, the recommendation is to note the progress.
So that's not getting answered. I've not made a political point, Chairman. That's not getting answered. I really haven't made a political point. I'd simply asked a very sensible question, which Councillor Ansell actually said was, and I'm only asking for an answer from officers. There's nothing wrong in what I've said. I'm not being political at all.
What question were you asking?
Sorry?
Question are you asking?
I asked the question due to the financial difficulties that we know we're going to be in, and I understand the closure or the pause on the Pitsea and Billericay swimming pool, so I understand it. But why something like the youth zone and that, which is going to cost a lot more money, being allowed to continue? I would have thought a consistency. Where's the consistency? That was my question. It wasn't a political question at all. It was supported. You know. You're on mute again, Chair.
I'll answer the question. Where we are able to progress projects, we are progressing them. Where we are unable to progress projects, we are pausing them. Not for any political reason, the reasons which are outlined in the report and that Mr. Brace has carried on and told us about. Okay, so is everyone happy with the progress for projects? Okay. Right, next item, item 6, car park improvements update. This is an update on what was agreed expenditure by SEP. We did it at the committee last year. It's for noting. The only item on there I think we need to know about is that the car park machines will be likely to be the new ones put in place this month. Call in Mr. Hendry. He's here, I think. James, if you could outline just the ones where we haven't completed, which mainly are the nuisance parking, which comes up on the next item, and I think the car park machines.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, you're quite correct. Obviously, of a number of areas of improvement within car parks that we identified using the SEP funding. The two which are outstanding are the new car park machines, which are on order, but the manufacturing of them has been delayed owing to COVID and some difficulties with manufacturers around that. And the nuisance parking is, we've had the initial report done. They've undertaken some samples of some nuisance parking issues within the borough. We've got that as the next item to look at the next steps with that one.
Councillor Buckley.
Thanks, Jim. Just a quick question on the car parking machines. You and I know are very familiar with Wickford Car Park, and I understood that the machines have been replaced probably a year or 18 months ago. Are these the ones that are subject to vandalism, which has been suggested in the report, or are we ripping out fairly new machines to replace them with even more superior ones?
Councillor Buckley. Mr. Hendry.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Yeah, you're correct in saying that the machines that we've had previously, there is a game of cat and mouse with vandals and criminals who try to get into the machines. The new machines that we're looking at, they do take card payment, which reduces the amount of coin that's in the machine as well. The security is upgraded so that they will be more secure. They've basically taken on board some of the weaknesses of the old machines, and the security is better within the new machines that we've got coming in.
Mr. Hendry. Councillor Blake.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Maybe I should be political and might get answers then. Just a comment regarding not a problem with this at all, because actually we allocated far more money in our budget to do these improvements. So don't have a particular issue with this. But just like to ask going back to the, if Paul Brace, obviously this is live stream, so he will have a record of it, could answer the question in writing that I asked earlier, I'd be much appreciated. But other than that, don't have a problem with this at all. So I look forward to that response in writing, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Anybody else on this item? Otherwise, it's for noting. Thank you. Item 7, nuisance parking areas for trial. Mr. Hendry.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. So this feeds on from the previous report, where we were allocated some of the surplus revenue from South Essex Parking Partnership. One of the projects that we looked at was to reduce the number of instances and areas where we're getting nuisance parking across the borough. There's a number of different types of nuisance parking. We put a request out there. We got 25 locations back, and we worked with a company called 2020 Consulting, who are parking specialists. They were able to go out and take a sample of the typical types of problems that we get. So rather than viewing the same type of nuisance parking 10 times and coming up with a model, they were able to look at some potential interventions. And what we've got on this report here is a potential outline for some trial areas. What we are proposing with this is that we look at some typical examples of areas where we're getting nuisance parking. We've split them into the type of parking issue that we've got at the bottom of page 26 and top of page 27. They explain some of the issues that we're getting, but they're typical of what we get across the borough. Within that report, they outlined a number of resolutions, but the good thing that's come back from that consultation exercise as well is the consultants designed a toolkit for us to use, so that when we get other areas which either experiencing the same issues at the moment, or they're experiencing different issues further down the line, it will give us a way of evaluating them, so that helps us to prioritize. What we're also proposing through this the approach here is that these are not all works that are entirely within the remit of Basildon Council, and we will need to collaborate and cooperate with our colleagues across local highways panel, Essex County Council highways and others to benefit the look and feel of the borough. So this is about the approach that we've got outlined here is about how we join up with our partner authorities to improve the look and feel of the borough, as well as reducing instances of nuisance parking. And all we're looking for at this point is the approval of the process and the trial areas to then report back to committee at a future date to say, this is what does work, this is what doesn't work. It will give us a better idea about where we can, what we can do moving forward. So it is small scale at this point.
I should point out that on this report, we asked on the members' bulletin sometime before we started this members to come in with examples of where they thought there was nuisance parking. So that's where the idea came from. Councillor Morris, Councillor Morris.
I haven't got a clue what you said there, Chairman.
Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, since that report was survey was done, I've noticed since the lockdown, there are an awful lot more people now who were commuting are actually working from home. So I wonder if that report still up to date? Should it be redone?
So Buckley, Mr. Hendry will come back afterwards. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think Councillor Morris actually makes a good point, because I think there is certainly a trend to working from home long term. That wasn't actually a point I intended to make. That I am a member of the local highways panel, as indeed is Councillor Smith, and we would have to make a a decision on any proposals that were put forward. So on that basis, I could vote for item 1, but I would abstain from item 2 if you take the vote separately. Because as like planning, I would not wish to jeopardise a decision either way. That's not to say I'm not supportive of it. And the reason I'm not anti this proposal, the local highways panel last year did offer all members the opportunity to nominate areas where the local highways panel would fund additional parking. I and Councillor Ball, as the Wickford representatives, nominated the top end of 7 acres, which if you go around there, you'll see the additional parking has been put in on the highways verge near where Springfield Road is. Another scheme was put in Billericay. I'm not aware of any being requested by the Newtown members. I could be wrong on that. But when we talk about this as a trial, I think you might want to call on the experience of the local highways panel and its officers, because if it's been something that's been able to be done successfully, which I believe it has, then why need a trial? Why not just go in and deliver the project? That makes a lot more sense than spending some money testing the project. I do agree that there are a lot of sites around the borough where improvements could be made, and most of it is because drivers don't pay any respect to the immediate area and its landscaping, but also the fact that so much of the borough was designed back in the 1950s and 60s, where ordinary working people were not expected to have a car, so no provision was made. So that was just the point I wanted to make on it, Chairman. The only other point would be whether or not Basildon Council would offer some match funding, because the local highways panel, as Councillor Smith, I'm sure, will confirm, has its budget committed probably 18 months or more ahead. And realistically, if the highways panel agreed to deliver a project today, you're looking a couple of years down the line at the best.
Councillor Buckley. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just got not much of an issue with this, but I was very surprised because one of the don't get many complaints in Burstead, I have to say, other than normal planning issues. But the one thing I do get bombarded with is parking issues and whatnot. So I was very surprised, unless my eyes deceive me, that there's not one area in the Billericay area at all that's on the list. I find that, I mean, I'm sure there's an explanation. It seems very strange because I know that from other Billericay councillors, one of the biggest complaints we get is the state of the roads and paths, but that's a county issue. But is the parking and being pulled up on it all the time. So I'm very surprised that it's not in the top area, or have an area that's not on that list. I'm quite surprised by that. Thank you.
I assure you that I, to my knowledge, no other member had an input at all to the list. The list came from the report, which was initiated by the company that did the report for the council. Mr. Hendrick.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'll take each point in turn. Councillor Morris made the first point around updating the report, and correct to say, obviously, the people's habits are changing. More people are working from home. I mean, we've experienced it in other service areas where there's more cars on the street. It makes it more difficult to get refuse collection vehicles down and things like that. So I totally take that on board. One of the things that's come out the back of this report, I think I mentioned it when I was going through the report, was the we have the toolkit to enable us to address and reassess in real time. So as we get new sites reported to us, that we can then, if things change, we can reassess what our interventions might be as a result of that and reprioritize over time. So it does give us that opportunity there. Councillor Buckley, absolutely understand where you're coming from with the local highways panel. And that's one of the reasons why we've put that in there is something we need to collaborate with, because we need to draw on the expertise within the borough to make sure that we're doing. The ultimate aim of this is to reduce nuisance parking. So however we can work together with that, those are the things that we're asking for tonight for support to explore further. But it is going to be something that we'll do in collaboration with colleagues wherever we need to. And Councillor Blake is in response to areas of Billericay. If you would like to send me some, what I can do is I can use the tool to assess them and let you know kind of where they come out, and I'm happy to sort of show you how we come to those figures. Thank you.
Mr. Hendry. Okay, I'll move now to the recommendations. The requests. Oh, yeah. I didn't see you there.
Hello, can you hear me?
You reappeared from nowhere.
No, I've been sitting here patiently waiting for the wrapping up. I mean, my view is I think the committee should vote for both recommendations because it just puts more pressure on the organisation that runs the local highways panel, which is a company called Ringway Jacobs. When any submissions are put forward to the local highways panel, you'd wish you'd phone up Arthur Daly or Del Boy, because the quotes Ringway Jacobs has a monopoly on are outrageous. And I'll give you an example from my division. Is to design a zebra crossing on Florence Way. Now, they've not phoned Gucci, Boss or any other top designer, but they reckon it costs £8,500. So that's not just a one-off example. On Clayle Road a few years ago, after a bus stop to be installed, and they said to me it would cost £6,500 to design a concrete base. And it was in the local paper, and I was talking to one of our officers, Stuart McDermott, and he said that is 10 minutes worth of work. Now, what I think the problem you will come into it, Ringway Jacobs will not want to charge Basildon fair prices. They want to charge the prices they've been allowed to get away with. So where a scheme might cost X, they will want Y. And I mean, just looking at some of the schemes in front of me, typically to install a wooden pole into the turf is £4,500, a piece of wood into grassed area. And when challenged, the officers who are employed by Ringway Jacobs say it's design costs. And I'm sure Councillor Buckley will testify, we all look at each other aghast. So I think all members should vote for this because it will shine a light on the terrible deal the county has struck with Ringway Jacobs in the hope the £500,000 allocated to the Basildon Local Highways panel is shown up for being a terrible deal for taxpayers. And good news for Ringway Jacobs shareholders.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I intend to get into a debate about the benefits or not of Ringway Jacobs. I intend to take the recommendations 1 and 2 together, as we normally take recommendations, see the process, identify locations. Can anyone hear me? Okay, recommendations 1 and 2. All those in favour. Councillor Blake, in favour or against?
Abstain.
Councillor Buckley.
Abstain.
Councillor Morris.
Abstain.
Councillor Ansell.
At 4.
Councillor Adeniran.
4.
Also in favour, and I use my casting vote in favour of the recommendations. Thank you. Item 8, play review. Mr. Taylor is here, I think.
Hello,
Thank you, Grant. I think this is an important item. I hope everybody can hear me. Everybody can hear me. It's an important item. I understand that Councillor Blake, obviously this started under his administration, looking at play areas, a review of them. So it's important to bring it forward now because the current play strategy was adopted in 2006. And although there's been various changes along the line, minor ones, and some play areas have closed, etc., This report, I think, is an important way forward. And I'll ask Mr. Taylor now to proceed, and I think we've got a presentation, Grant.
Yes, thank you. Just share my screen. I hope that's something everyone can see. Can everyone see my screen? Sorry, just an indication. Is that okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay. So thank you very, very much. So we have currently have 145 play areas in the Basildon Borough. 128 of them are owned by Basildon Council, with 13 owned by 13 of those within our housing department. 2 are in the ownership of our parish councils. Sorry. It's gone skipping the screen so I can see. 2 of those owned by our parish councils and 2 from South Anglia Housing. 143 are of those are maintained by Basildon Council. So the concept and approach we're looking to take is a quality, not quantity approach, and that's what we've taken from the 2006 play strategy. Councillors, my children have just wandered in on me. Do you mind if I ask them to leave very quickly? This is hugely embarrassing. They've just wandered into the room. I will be 1 second. This is live TV. I'm very sorry. They've just wandered in at the most inappropriate moment. I'll be 1 second. I apologize.
Okay. Problems of childcare. Mr. Taylor.
I'm truly sorry. I did not expect them to wander in halfway through a meeting. I think there's apologies, everyone. Really am apologetic about that. I tried to rally through there, but it was too difficult. I hope you couldn't hear them. Sorry. Let's just get this right. So from the 2006 play assessment, we wanted to take a quality, not quantity approach. Now, this would be in relation to creating a network of well-designed, good quality, inclusive play spaces across our borough. That would certainly be our aim. And this fits in with our corporate objectives, finding a place where everyone prospers and a place where we can all be proud of. So the way we did this follows on, obviously, from the committee in March 2019, where we set out that we would be following Play England's Playable Space Quality Assessment Tool. This sets play spaces into 3 distinct groups. Type A, which are doorstep facilities, which could be discussed as a small space within sight of home where children, especially young children, can play within view of known adults. Type B, local facilities, which are larger space which can be reached safely by children beginning to travel independently and with friends without accompanying adults, and for adults with young children to walk with ease. So those that are those medium-sized facilities that we might get in and around our local communities. And then there's type Cs, which are our neighbourhood facilities, are larger spaces or facilities for informal recreation, where children and young people used to travel in longer distance independently can get to safely and spend time in play and informal recreation with their peers and have a wider range of play experiences. So those more larger destination facilities there. Now, the play evaluation we use looks at 3 different ways in which we evaluate. That's looking at the location, such as the type A, type B or C, the play value, so the value of the opportunity there and how that is supporting children with their early years education with regards to hand-eye coordination, with regards to sharing, with regards to all of the real positive things that play does in a child's early years and development and ongoing continuation as they get older to enjoy open spaces. and also with regards to the care and maintenance of those of these facilities. Now, from a care and maintenance point of view, we're very, very comfortable as an organisation that we maintain everything to a good standard anyway. So we've had a particular focus on the location, whether they were one of the type A, the type B, or type C, those that are very near homes, for instance, in type A, all the way through to those destination facilities. And from that, we put them into a RAG status: red, amber, green. Obviously, green being the positive, and red negative. So this work has led to us understanding that there are 81 of those type A doorstep facilities, and we've split them into what we've therefore thought, based on that criteria, where they are good, poor, average, or good. Similarly, with the medium facilities, the type B, the local facilities, and the similarly with the neighbourhood facilities, those destination, those that I termed as type C. So you can see the figures there from the work that took place to understand that. So we then did a bit more of a deep dive on those play areas offering poor or average play value and the location status. So we then tried to form them into where our breadth of knowledge showed where there was appropriate and inappropriate locations. And when we talk about an inappropriate location, it's important that I lead you to understand that this could be due to a number of different factors. It could be the impact of having on residents, like antisocial behaviour, vandalism, traditional low usage, etc. So they're the ones where we've gained insight over a number of years that they perhaps are not in the. If we were to start again or do some things from the beginning, that we perhaps not placed them so near housing or places where they were unseen, that led to ASB or inaccessible in many ways for low usage. So again, I won't talk you through every single one here, but you'll see here I've split this into type A, type B, and the next slide will show you type C, where we're looking at those that were deemed in poor quality, where they were in inappropriate locations or in good locations. And we did the same with the average. So you can see there, and I can run you through these, and obviously I will share this presentation. You can see there that we've tried to split that out. Similarly, there is the figures for type C. Now, it's important with the type C to say that, all of those were seen to be in actually good locations. So where we've got our destination facilities, our larger parks where people travel to from wider distances, they are in positive and the right locations where people are thoroughly enjoying them, as Paul Brace mentioned earlier on in his presentation, enjoying them very, very much at the moment. So to do this work, we have proposed the concept of a 10-year program of possible removal and investment. From a removal point of view, that will be about looking at those areas that are offering poor average play value and are situated in what we've termed as inappropriate locations. And you can see there that the number of play areas that on that basis would be up for discussion for possible removal. And the estimated costs of what that would cost us to actually remove them, with the concept that we would do that in the first 5 years of any scheme if we were to progress. Similarly, we've looked at the investment that would be necessary to get us into a state where we were producing this quality not quantity approach that we discussed. So to invest in these play areas, we would be looking at sizable estimated cost, but over a 10-year period. Now, of course, this is all about, again, as it says at the bottom there, creating a network of good play areas across the borough and supporting our children, young people and families to have the play facilities that I think we are hopeful for as an organisation. So moving on just to the final slide here. I think the big question is really, if this is an aspiration, how might we look to fund it? So I think it's really worth putting and making sure that members understand that we've done very, very well as an organisation for many, many years with local landfill trust funders, and they've invested hugely after positive work by many officers over a number of years in drawing down money and working with local ward councillors and communities to draw that money down from the Cleanaway Trust and from various Veolia named trusts. But as many people, and or probably all of you will know, that trust now it's finally winding down. So this is a pertinent piece of work to understand the situation as we lose access to some of that really, really important funding. But perhaps some of the opportunities that we are very, very keen to explore in line with our planning colleagues and in line with the work of the local plan is where we can seek financial contributions towards this proposed programme as part of any future development, looking at Section 106 opportunities or SIL funding or the like. So that would be very much part of the process of how we would look to bridge this work and bring it to fruition. But it is very important that I set out that any expenditure at the time will be dependent on the available resources at that time. So whilst these figures are important to share with members, so it's understood how we might get there, it's obviously dependent on what's available resources, and we're going through a time now perhaps where we would not have foreseen the financial impact. So I think that's important. Just to remind members of what the recommendations are for this evening, and that we're seeking clarification or seeking support on, is that one that we approve. Sorry,
can I stop you there, because I'm going to read out some amendments.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. Can I just say then, so this is all based on the completion of a consultation exercise, and that's very important that I get that across. So please do, Councillor. I will stop sharing my screen.
If I could read out the changes to the recommendations. So recommendation 1 stays as it is, approves the concept of a network of good play areas across the borough. Number 2, I'm deleting the words with ward members and the local community, and the 3 words in the locality. So it reads, approves consultation to be undertaken regarding the play offer with particular focus on play areas that offer poor or average play value that are considered to be in inappropriate locations. And then I delete 3 and replace it with that consultation takes place with ward members, that's all ward members, and a further report will be presented to the committee at the November meeting, providing the findings of this consultation. That further community consultation is taken place between November and the end of the municipal year, based on the agreed recommendations from the November Neighbourhoods and Public Spaces Committee, with a finalised consultation report being presented to the committee in March 2021. I think it's important that we present this and the options to all ward members, so all 42 members of the council can have a say how it affects their area and see the details. And then the public consultation once the councillors, as a majority, are agreed on the way forward. I'll bring in Councillor Blake, because I know Councillor Blake did have some input on this previously. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I support this. As you know, it's something that we started. I think we got rid of 81 initially. We're not going to play politics on it. Unfortunately, when I was chairman, that wasn't the case, and every bit of play area we was taken away, there was going to be houses built on, apparently. So we're not going to go down the avenue of that, because that's we're bigger and better than that. What I would say, can you confirm because we was going to make an amendment, but I hear what you say. What I would like to say, that all members see the whole thing. The reason why I say that is you could have a situation like in Pitsea North West, where you've got 3 Labour councillors and the Conservatives wouldn't have got that. So if you can confirm that every member will get every area in the borough, then that's fine.
I think he initially, Councillor, see it as slightly different to what you've said, as all the Billericay members together, the Wickford members together, The Pitsea.
No, can I comment?
Let me finish. Initially,
take me for an example, Chairman. Please take me as an example. I live in Pitsea, and yet I'll have three. And I'm just being honest. I'll have three councillors who might not even share that view with me at all as a councillor. And I think it's important that every member see, or even if you also say you'll let every committee member have. Every committee member has that information, and it's up to them, because we've got all the political parties, they could then disseminate to their particular areas, not a problem. But I would be concerned that, no disrespect to the Pitsea North West councillors, I'm not going down that avenue, but I won't then know what's going to happen in my own area through that system. But if we knew what's happening in all the areas, and why not? What we got to hide? Why there's no reason why all members, I'm asking officers, is there a reason why all members cannot be given full list of every area that's under consideration? I don't think that's an unreasonable request, because it's for the reasons I gave.
Actually, I don't disagree with you. I think, and I've seen the full details. It can be political dynamite. It might be, it might not be. Thing here is one thing only, is to ensure across the borough, wherever we are, we have good play areas. And I think the problem has been in the past, the new town was built, a little bit of land, someone says we'll make that a play area, it meets some requirement or whatever. And in Billericay and in Wickford, across the whole borough. And this is an opportunity, and I know Councillor Blake, up to now what has been done over the last few years, and I think that's to be appreciated. And this is now that one step further, which I think has to be continued. Because if not, all the play areas in the borough are gradually going to go, except for the big ones, will go downhill, I think. So I think it's important. Unless Mr. Taylor see any problems, if everyone's seeing the complete thing, it's a lot of pages. It's a lot of pages, but we can do that. And be honest, Councillor Blake, I think it's rather a pity that we are operating like this at the moment, because this would be a perfect opportunity for this committee initially to sit down and see everything and then share it in a normal way. But
Chairman, I'm happy for that. If you wish just this committee to have all of it so they can disseminate that, that was actually going to be our amendment. Our amendment was going to say that every member of this committee receives the full document for them to disseminate, because we'll all then cover the whole borough. We'd all make sure we've done that. So I don't have a problem with that, rather than make 42 things. So no problem with that.
I see a problem with that. I see a Councillor Smith waving his hand. Councillor Smith, first of all, but I'm happy to members of this committee initially and the leaders of groups to have copies of the documents, and then we'll proceed from there. Councillor Smith.
Mr. Chairman, I think you just answered my question. If you make sure a copy comes to me as a group leader, because my group doesn't sit on that committee that you chair, and if you do it, I'll be quite happy.
A good point. Councillor Ansell first, and I'll bring Councillor Taylor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Taylor. Mr. Taylor in.
Thank you, Chairman. I think again it's worth again seeing where the debate in the borough has been at some point. Certainly, when I've been on the council, I think it's probably worth recognising again, the pragmatic and grown-up approach from all sections, all sections of the political divide on this issue in particular. Given it is an important one. And I think, to put on record, my approach on this issue, I think, follows the value that we have a responsibility to our residents to use their taxpayer money sensibly. And also, and again, I look at this issue and I see it's about getting the best value for the taxpayer, and two, ensuring families, children, young people have decent places to play. Again, we heard at the beginning of the meeting the financial impact of COVID-19 on the council, and I think it's only right that we look to be smart, in how we use taxpayer money, and to ensure at the end of the day that we provide play areas that are of real good value and are worth using. Again, that's all from me, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ansell. Can I say this? This is a 10-year programme, so that is why I'm happy to share this, because if administrations of this council change, I don't want it to, we agree it this year, next year something changes, so someone doesn't go ahead. So let's have some unanimity on it, and if we have that, we know there's a programme there, officers can work to it, and the only thing that can occur at the end of the day then is the borough improves its play areas. Mr. Taylor, you wish to come in?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it was just to reiterate that this is very much an aspirational piece of work, and is something that we, rather than just passing over documents, I think what we would like to get to a stage is whereby we can create something virtually, whereas officers, some of my officers, could talk you through the work we've done. I think it lends itself much better to being something. I mean, obviously we can share the documents, but I think it would help to have an introduction to the work we've done and why we're thinking, and actually have a bit of a question and answer with people. So if that's permissible, I think that would be perhaps more helpful than just giving the workings out, as it were. I think there would be something beneficial to dialogue with the officers involved, perhaps for using Zoom or the like. Just wanted to raise that.
Councillor Buckley.
You're muted, Malcolm.
Right. Can you hear me now? Yeah. I agree with the comment Mr. Taylor just made, that it would be useful at some point to have a proper presentation, a discussion over this. Like Councillor Blake, I do think that all members of the committee, at the very least, and no issues with Councillor Smith and so on having it as well, but I do think that we all warrant a copy of the full report, so that we can assess what might be in there, what the impact might be, whether there are issues that we may wish to challenge, maybe we won't. But I think the principle that we're going ahead on is the right one, and we should be driving for good quality. I have just a couple of points. Certainly many years ago, when I looked at the cost of maintenance of play areas or recreational areas and that, it did seem that the small ones were disproportionately expensive to maintain. And perhaps Mr. Taylor could comment on whether that is a significant budget impact that would enable us to put bigger investments elsewhere. And also the question is, what happens to the spaces that we remove? Are they just going to revert to open greens, to planting? Are they going to become potential building plots? And I appreciate this meeting is not the meeting where we'll get the answers to those questions, but perhaps looking forward to when we do get the presentation, Mr. Taylor could be prepared to deal with that sort of query.
Can I just say, hope that we'll stick to one thing. Any better? Can we let all group leaders, first of all, have copies of the total thing?
I would just add, and committee members, Chairman.
Yeah, I concur with what Malcolm said, because at the end of the day, we're more knowledgeable than what our no disrespect to the leaders and whatnot, but as we should be, because that's why we're here. So.
Okay. Very well said. Okay. I'm happy with that. But can I just say, I hope that we don't get into a debate when we get this on what is going to happen if any disappear, because I would hope to stick to using Play England's guidelines and definitions. I want to stick to Play England's guidelines and definitions.
Hi, Councillor.
You're muted.
I think he was saying that when members look at it, you'd like them to stick to Play England's guidelines and definitions. Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. So to answer Councillor Buckley's questions, so with regards to question one, I haven't done the in-depth analysis on that, but I, anecdotally, certainly was speaking with the guys that do the work. We do spend a lot of time with regards to we do spend a healthy amount of our budget for repairs on some of those more smaller play areas that are very, very close to housing. And I think it's fair to say there are examples whereby people power has led to us perhaps stopping repairing some things, because then sometimes there are examples where it's not necessarily vandalism from young people, or whereas sometimes communities saying, I don't want that right outside my front door. So there's a bit of people power. So we have replaced things over a number of years and realised that we've had to actually stop them in the first place. With regards to the work, therefore, we still had to go and inspect those areas because they are designated play spaces. So there is a cost to the taxpayer for perhaps putting investment or paying for people to inspect areas where we probably really shouldn't be bothering, but we're protecting the taxpayer from any claims in the future as well. So the play value is low. There are examples, where the play value is very low for young people. They tend to get on the nerves of other people there because it attracts people to sit outside their homes and make noise. So this is very much about having the right, having great play areas in the right spaces is the theory. On the second question, what happens to the spaces when we remove them? I've got no prerequisite ideas on that. That's very, very much part of the conversation we wanted to have with ward members and local communities. So that would be that's something that officers haven't got a view on at this stage. We would want to have that conversation with members and the community themselves. Thank you.
I assume you was pointing at me, Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of things. And I would never normally say this, but I think if you think this won't get political, and it won't be for me, I have to say, that's very naive, purely and simply because it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And I can promise you that won't be coming from me as far as I could, because I understand what I went through last time. Like as I said to you earlier, as far as every little bit of green that was going to be taken away, or play area, it was going to be built on according to thing. So that was an issue which I had to deal with, and I happily dealt with it. I will say though, there is one difference. At that time, we 100% knew what was going to happen to every area, and it was all going to be grassed. So a little bit of a concern that we don't know what we're going to do with those areas now, because that should be sorted out before you go out to consultation. In that sense, because we made a point, or I made a point with officers, we would not be building on any of the areas we're taking away. Grant said just now that we don't know what we're going to do with these areas. That will raise up more concerns than what my one did at that particular time. That's all I'm saying. But as I said to you, I'm being absolutely upfront. It won't be political as far as I'm concerned, because I understand the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. One reason I wanted it to go out to all members first of all before it went to public consultation, so we could deal with all these issues. Mr. Brace, did you want to go?
It was only to clarify. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Because my internet has not been very good. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I think Mr. Taylor has been spot on. What we have focused this project on is looking at the play equipment and its play value. We have not stretched it out any further than that to understand the land and other bits that are around it, and any other opportunities we may have to improve open space or indeed use it for other purposes, sports facilities or whatever. We've not taken the project that far. We've focused solely on play and its location. I think that's the next stage. Once we know what would disappear in consultation, we can then have a conversation generally openly around what we do with that space. Ultimately, if we're taking out play areas, it will be back to grass and seed. That will be the first instance of us doing anything of removal, which is what we did when we removed actually 96 last time, Councillor Blake. So all we did was take out and seed. So that is kind of the same principle we're on at the moment. What we do beyond that, in conversation with members here, if there are other opportunities, whatever they may be, for different kinds of facilities or whatever, that's another stage that we do. But that's, again, in consultation with members, obviously, and certainly with residents of those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. So can I move then to the recommendations? Do I need to read them again, or are you happy? You happy? Okay. And I guarantee we do what we said, details to members of this committee, first of all. They can circulate them to and group leaders. All those in favour? I'll start with Councillor Ansell.
4, Chairman.
Councillor Adeniran.
4, Chairman.
Councillor Blake.
4.
Councillor Morris.
4.
Councillor Buckley.
4.
And myself, 4. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is just for noting, because it has suddenly been decided that these minutes of the South Essex Parking Partnership Joint Committee should be reported to this committee. And it happens to be the first one which Mr. Hendry and myself didn't attend, but they're for noting. Okay. Councillor Buckley.
Yeah, I wasn't going to comment on the attendance, Chairman. It was just reading through the minutes. It does mention about a trial for a smart car, and we did have a smart car when Basildon controlled it. So I remember introducing it when Terry Sargent was responsible for it, and we had it for several years. And I just posed the question, why do they need a trial? Because they can draw on the experience that we had here.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. That will be noted, and I'm sure it's on the agenda for the next meeting, which I think is on July the 2nd. Thank you. We agree to note those minutes. Thank you. Which moves us on to the land incursion update, which Mr. Price is going to give. I did invite the police commissioner, if he could come along tonight to talk to us, but unfortunately he wasn't available. Mr. Brace.
This was just to bring members up to date. This was a request from Councillor Smith to Councillor Harrison for a report to be brought before you. It's just a reminder that a review of open space, which following incursion that had happened in the borough just recently. So we have, just to remind members, way back in this committee, back on the 11th of February, I brought a report to you regarding the protection of council land. At that time, we'd seen a massive reduction in our incursions. There were just 5 in that previous year, and that was because of the work that we'd done with the police and the ECTU. So we consequently, you agreed or decided at that committee, the members of that time had decided that the investment that to protect all council land, which was in the region of £640,000, would not be required. Subsequently, members of this committee and other members had requested that the one area that had 2 incursions at Sun Corner, that money that had been allocated for the Town Centre Revival Committee for Billericay would invest in a fence or a gate to protect the land at Sun Corner, and that was agreed by all Billericay members, I believe, and was approved by Councillor Harrison. So we still in the borough have very low incursions at this current time. Now, during the COVID lockdown, there has been specific guidance provided to the police and to us and county regarding the treatment of incursions. Now, the incursion that is currently in Basildon is being treated in line with that guidance, which is basically that, yes, they will be inspected and checked, but they will not be moved on in the normal way unless they are causing significant antisocial behaviour, criminal activity, etc. So I believe, Councillor Harrison, you'd had a response from Councillor Bentley from Essex to confirm that they had been inspecting on the site. There had not been significant criminal activity, and the police were continuing to monitor. So the current situation is we're keeping an eye, ETCU are keeping an eye, the police are keeping an eye. We have not seen any further activity in the borough, but obviously we are on a daily basis checking our land. But in terms of protecting our land, we did decide back in February that it was we didn't want to invest given the drop in the amount of incursions that we'd had. So that just gives a round of where we are currently.
Thank you, Mr. Brace. I should point out it was a Policy and Resources Committee that asked for this report to come to this committee, not myself personally. Councillor Smith, yeah, but Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Paul Brace. I mean, what we have, and I do not wish to criticise the boys and girls in blue. I mean, just what we saw the last weekend, they've been in a tough place. So I don't want to criticise the frontline officers. But what my concern is, after seeing that publication from the Essex County Travelling Unit with the police, is that any travelling incursion there, they're not going to deal with. They'll pop down, have a look, and walk off. Now, what my concern is, as we've seen with other travelling incursions, I'm not saying this travelling incursion has done so, but we have seen it with many other travelling incursions, where there's fly tipping on public land, they go around, we have no crunch service, it's a 3-hour wait to get to the tip, and you see that mysterious advert in the paper, or online, wherever, house clearance, you pay the money, they take it along, and if they've taken over a corner of a local park, public car park, and they dump the rubbish and go elsewhere. So that was why I wanted it brought up to see, is there anything we can physically do to check gates, mounds of earth, anything like that? Because at the moment, we can't look to the Essex County Travelling Unit to enforce the law. And the other point I wish to bring up is that people want to enjoy that bit of limited exercise they can get. And they obviously can't go to Southend for obvious reasons, from the pictures we've seen in the paper. So in local parks, I've seen a corner, if a part of it is subject to a travelling incursion, that deters residents from using that playing area. So I think this is what I brought here. So we can see what we can do until this COVID-19 issue is addressed, because it's not disappearing anytime soon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. And who thought I wouldn't be speaking on this one? Well, I'd be very surprised. I agree with most of what Councillor Smith. Where I do disagree, and I disagreed with him at the P&R meeting the other day, to say that the police won't take any action for incursions is not true. What they will do, and I said, if they will look at the situation, if there is no, or they feel detrimental effect, even though it might be, the numbers might be considerable, if they're keeping their spatial distance, and there doesn't seem to be any antisocial behaviour, then they're going to let it lie, but keep it under review. So that is slightly different now. My views on travellers has never ever changed. I believe we should have the Irish solution, and it's as simple as that. And I'll never change my views on that. And going back to what Councillor Smith said, if people are using them, and this is a warning to anybody listening out there, if people are using travellers to get rid of their waste and they're just dumping it, the responsibility lies with those people. It won't be the travellers that'll be getting the fine. If it can go back to that household is the one that will be in trouble. So that's, let's make that quite clear. So the police will act. I must admit, I literally had Steve Metcalfe's office on the phone to me today regarding this issue, and they have told me that they're getting so many complaints from residents of antisocial behaviour up there. Certainly and the dumping apparently is horrendous. So if it's possible, whilst we've got the correct officers on there, I haven't had a chance to speak to them individually off the record today. But if they can look into that to see if there is something else we can do, because I literally very rarely I get contacted from Steve Metcalfe's office on an issue like this. But they were fuming, to say the least. There's so many complaints of fly tipping and the smell and the antisocial behaviour that's happening up there. So I was wondering whether we could just take another look at that possibly. So thank you, Chairman.
Can I just ask, the site we're talking about is the one just not in our borough? It's the one in Thurrock?
Mr. Chairman, just to correct you, the land is owned by Essex County Council, but Essex County Council pays Thurrock Council to look after the Wesley Heights. So the responsibility is with Thurrock and the Essex County Traveller Unit.
Thank you. Mr. Brace, did you want to come back?
I was just going to say, yes, we will go up there, and I will inform members, but we'll get the team to have a look tomorrow. I'm sure Thurrock and/or County will also do that, but to update members, we will give a response to. I think we've had this conversation as officers that the piece of land may well be in Basildon, it may well be in Thurrock, but ultimately we should be looking after residents as best we can wherever they are. And, there isn't a boundary line across there for everybody to understand. So we'll pick that up tomorrow, and then I'll report back to those to all members on the committee. Okay.
Thank you very much. Can I also add the point Councillor Blake made about using travellers to get rid of their rubbish, which ends up being fly tipped, is very relevant. Thank you again for that. Do you want to come back? Okay, are we happy then to note the report? Yes. Okay, thank you. We move on now to 11, which is, sorry, I dealt with the South East Parking Partnership in advance. Sorry about that. The work programme.
Yeah, it's the normal work programme. We're bringing it to you this time to approve the September. Sorry, I'm just going through my iPad to find it. Because we've not had the annual council meeting yet, technically the municipal year hasn't started. So Staffing Matters and Review Subcommittee agreed the timetable up to the annual council meeting in September, and then they'll review the timetable again after that. So all we're asking members to do at the moment is approve or endorse the work programme for September, and note the other items that are on there. Obviously, the usual applies. You can add items to it, but again, it will come back to you in September to approve, or in November to approve the rest of the year after the annual council meeting. Just noted during the meeting, we've got one to add on there, which will be the nuisance parking item that will be coming back following this evening's report.
Thank you, Julie. But I will say that I'm expecting in September to have yet further updates on the progress of any projects which we had tonight, because I think it's important we keep up to date with those and don't let them slide unnecessarily. So that will be an update on that in September as well. Mr. Brace, first of all, then Councillor Buckley.
Can we just also add to that as a COVID update as well, Councillor, because there will obviously be some impacts of that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Councillor Buckley. You've just muted yourself.
It's all this high-tech technology. You and I come from the age of quill pens, I'm afraid.
I've found now I'm clearer. Now I leave myself unmuted.
Yeah. Right, I wanted to put an extra item on there, and my proposal, which Councillor Blake will second, is that an additional meeting of this committee be held by the end of June to receive a report and to discuss the future of land in Wickford, designated HC3 public open space and referred to as Wick Green or Gibraltar Walk.
For what purpose?
As you're aware, Chairman, there are negotiations ongoing, and this committee needs to be aware of them and what's happening.
I think the things you're talking about are not under the guise of this particular committee. But if you have a seconder, if you propose it and have a seconder.
Have a seconder, Councillor Blake.
Councillor Blake.
I formally second it, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Anybody else wish to speak? No? Right, okay. Those in favour? Councillor Buckley's in favour. Councillor Blake?
In favour.
Morris? In favour? Councillor Morris?
Yes, I'm in favour of that.
Favour, okay. Councillor Adeniran, I'm against, by the way. Councillor Adeniran?
Against.
Councillor Ansell? You're muted.
Sorry, members. Against, Chairman. Apologies for the mic.
And I'll give my casting vote against. I think it's unnecessary to have yet another meeting for one small item at this stage. I'm happy to include it if necessary. If it doesn't come under the guise of this committee, it will go somewhere else. I'm happy otherwise in September. Okay? That's defeated.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all we have tonight, I believe. So just to approve the work programme. All those in favour of the work programme? Councillor Ansell?
4, Chairman.
Councillor Adeniran?
4, Chairman.
Councillor Morris?
4.
Councillor Buckley?
Against.
Councillor Blake?
Against.
And I'm in favour. Thank you very much. That's carried. Right, thanks very much for your attendance, and I apologise for my problems with the microphone or whatever, and also Mr. Brace, thanks for coming back.
And for what it's
Yeah,
worth,
I can only
on the
apologise,
internet,
Councillor.
Thanks very much.
I was just saying that is something we've had at County Hall. I think there is an issue with the capacity of the
Can you stop the recording, Julie?